Thank you all so much for joining us. On behalf of the Mississippi Gulf Coast Chamber of Commerce, we are happy to present Ask the Expert, Navigating Insurance in a COVID-19 Environment. My name is Katie Weldon, and I'm the Programming Director with the Gulf Coast Chamber of Commerce. And the mission of the Chamber is to connect, inform, advocate, and develop. And with us today, I want to welcome our expert, Ms. Angelyn Zeringue with SouthGroup Insurance. Angelyn is a trusted choice independent insurance agent and president of SouthGroup Insurance Services, Gulf Coast, and AST Solutions, Inc. She is also a prolific public speaker on technology, insurance, and business issues. And without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Angelyn Zeringue.
Thank you so much, Katie. I'm really happy to be here today. There's just so many things that are going on that are challenging in our environment. So much has changed in a few short weeks. And we have lost some of what we considered normal now, but we also have such opportunity to be even better in the future. As a risk manager, I really enjoy working with other business owners and trying to identify what could go wrong. What are the things that keep you up at night for your business operations? How can we best address each of these areas? So one of the things that I always look at is the workforce. How are we going to manage the workforce? How are we going to be able to retain them, to keep them productive during this very crazy time that we're dealing with? So what are the implications of our staffing at this time? Moving into operations, our operations may have to become very different. We may need to migrate more to deliveries or to the internet. We need to implement more health and safety precautions to protect our workers and our customers. Moving to the supply chain, these are the different business entities that our business relies on. And if they disappear or they're not prepared, what is the impact going to be on our operations? So we need to know that they're staying viable, and we need to know the impact on our bottom line as a result of their changes. Profit is always something important to business owners. What impact is COVID going to have on our bottom line? We know that revenue and expenses are the most critical part of our finances. How are we going to increase revenue, and how are we going to decrease expenses to retain our profitability? And that goes hand in hand with liquidity. What on earth are we going to do to maintain our cash flow? How are we going to be able to continue to pay our bills? How are we going to be able to retain our employees and pay them without a straightforward cash flow continuing? And then there's always taxes. What is the impact going to be for our tax burdens? And how do we continue to support our communities and nation to supply the critical infrastructure that we need and the services that we rely on? Branding. How do we keep our brand visible in front of the right people? Things have really changed. There's got to be a better way of doing things. We need to think through how we can achieve that. Long-term viability. How do we keep our businesses relevant for the future? And opportunities. What opportunities are there to develop our businesses further so that we can thrive in the future? So as you go through these different thought processes and all of these concerns you have, and set up your reaction and your plan for addressing them all, make sure that you discuss your operational changes with your insurance agent, because this is for your protection. As you change things in your operations, it may not fit the current insurance that you have. You may have to have more or less insurance or a different type of insurance altogether, and your insurance agent can help you with that. And as tempting as it may be right now to say, I need to save some money and I'm just going to cancel my insurance, don't do that if you are planning to be in business in the future. You've got to consider the longer term outlook, because if you lose your coverage, it will lead to higher costs in the future. The insurance companies surcharge you if you don't have continued insurance. And for heaven's sake, don't let your flood insurance lapse. It's going to be very hard to replace, and if you do get it back, then you're going to end up paying quite a surcharge because of all of the different changes we've had in the flood zones in our area. And hurricane season is coming, so hang on to that flood insurance. We don't recommend creating gaps in your coverage, because if you tweak one thing and you drop some coverage, it might cause a huge exposure for you that's going to be very costly in the long run. Again, please work with your insurance agent, because they can help you traverse through all of these different situations. And make sure you're taking advantage of the CARES Act, because there's a lot of loans and different resources that are available for us as businesses that will help us make it through this tough time. All right, so let's start with talking about a couple of coverages that most businesses have. General liability. The general liability policy will protect your business from financial loss when you're liable for bodily injury or property damage. That's something that's caused by your service, your business operations, or your employees. It covers non-professional acts. That means it doesn't cover your work. So as an example, if you're a swimming pool installer, then it covers everything while you're doing the work, but it doesn't cover the swimming pool because that's deemed to be your work. But it's a good policy to have because it protects you from the bodily injury or property damage that may occur. And it's typically based on how much square footage your business occupies or on your sales. Workers' compensation protects you as the employer from any injury or disease or claims that your workers experience in the course of their business operations. So the premium on that policy is calculated based on payroll and the type of work that your workers do. So right here, you've got two opportunities in front of you right now, because two things that are being greatly impacted by COVID are sales and payroll. So if your insurance policy is based on that and you have a change in sales or payroll, then you may be able to change your policy. The way these policies work is they are subject to audit. So what does that mean? That means that at the beginning of the year, there is an estimate on your sales or your payroll, what you're going to do for that particular year. Then at the end of the year, the policy is audited or reconciled back to what actually happened, what actual payroll or actual sales you may have had. So if you had a good year, your sales and payroll could be higher, and then you would owe more money. But on the other hand, if your sales or payroll were less, then you could get a refund. So what I'm trying to communicate to you is if you notify your agent now, you don't have to wait till the end of the year. If you can quantify how much of an impact this is going to have on your operations, having COVID and being down for 2 months or having lower numbers of employees, you could generate an insurance refund now by notifying your agent that you're going to have the decrease in sales and payroll, and then that can be incorporated into your policy now as an endorsement to generate a refund. So you might want to consider that. Other policies that are responding at this time for the COVID situation are your health insurance. It will respond, and the problem we're running into with health insurance is there's so much need for our wonderful doctors and nurses and hospitals and clinics that they are just overloaded. So just the sheer number of patients that are needing to be dealt with right now are causing more innovative ways for us to get the medical services that we need. And one way is telehealth, or they call it telehealth or teledoc or telemed. These are all services that offer a virtual kind of consulting. So they can diagnose you over the phone or a video service. You can send them a picture. You can cough so that they can hear it. And the healthcare professionals that work with you virtually can evaluate and diagnose and offer treatment suggestions for you from the convenience of your home. So they'll call in a prescription, or they'll tell you, oh, you are really sick, you need to go to the hospital. They're not scared of telling you like it is. So there's a lot of good, and the cost of these products is quite low. It's about $10 a month. And that way you do not have to leave home and go into a clinic that may have other sick people there to contract yet something else when you have something on the minor side that needs to be dealt with, or anybody in your family. Another good coverage to consider is the short-term disability. This policy will replace part of your income for a short period of time whenever you're disabled. It'll usually be for 3 to 6 months. So this is a very valuable coverage to have, particularly in a situation like this where you're going to be out of work if you contract COVID. And these companies are responding for COVID. Likewise, long-term disability, we really haven't seen any of the COVID cases last so long that it would kick into long-term disability, even though they would be covered under this. But it would kick in after the short-term disability elimination period. And the average claim for long-term disability is about 35 months. Another good coverage would be critical illness coverage. It gives you a lump sum cash payment if the policyholder is diagnosed with a specific illness that's on their list, and COVID is on their list. So all of these products, if you don't have them now, maybe for the future, it might be something you want to consider, because with the exception of health insurance, the other coverages are very affordable. The health insurance is just crazy expensive, and I would expect that it's going to get even more expensive with all of these medical costs that we're experiencing. All right, another helpful product that is responding for COVID is workers' comp, because this is some protection for you for illness and disease and accidents and even death where something's related to work. It's got to be occupational for it to be compensable. But if you contract the virus on the job, that would be compensable. It would trigger the policy, and therefore it would assist you as the employer in paying for the medical costs for these employees. So this is a fantastic product for healthcare workers, grocers, restaurant workers, even office workers. Everybody can benefit from having this kind of coverage in a pandemic, because if you contract the disease at work, it would definitely help you in this situation. So then we start talking about, well, what are the other exposures that we may have as a result of all of this COVID? Well, a lot gets placed on employers. They've got so much responsibility and legal obligations to provide a safe and healthy workplace. And even if you do everything possible, if the employer can still be accused of wrongdoing. You could be accused of harassment or wrongful termination, or depriving somebody of a career opportunity, or inflicting emotional distress. There's so many things that you could be accused of. And the reality is that the number of lawsuits filed by employees against employers has been rising. So this employers' practices liability policy is very beneficial, because it protects you in a legal action against you. It'll reimburse your company for the cost of defending the lawsuit, and it also covers the legal costs whether you win or lose the suit. So that's really a comforting thing to know, that if you have employees and something goes south, that you'll have the protection in a legal status so that you can continue to do your business operations, because legal fees could just really put you under. So another thing I'll mention here is, because in an employer's practices case, you would have to demonstrate that you use the best possible care to protect your employee. I mean, things happen, but you do need to take steps to have the environment be safe and healthy for them. I would recommend that you implement a policy for handling COVID and a positive COVID employee, because you've got to be prepared to handle the situation very delicately and privately, because there's privacy laws that need to be addressed. So when you would deal, and you can go on the CDC website, and there are some samples, there's some really good HR folks that can assist you with this, but there's kind of 3 things that you really need to do for handling a situation like this. Number 1 is you have to express sympathy, because this is a scary time for everybody. And when somebody tests positive, they're going to be very concerned and afraid. And then second, you've got to find out who they have been in contact with, who they've been in close contact with within the last 2 weeks. You've got to find that out, because you are obligated to notify those people that they may have been contaminated in some way. And then, of course, you want to make sure that the infected folks stay home for their 2-week incubation. And then make sure that you send them to their own doctors, because you're not going to be a medical person and you're not going to be able to consult them. They have got to get some medical attention so that they can be as safe as possible, and then know the implications for their family. So it's a very sensitive situation, and as an employer, you need to be prepared for this. Likewise, if you are in an association or a nonprofit and other entities that have directors and officers, you could be accused of wrongful acts that you've considered and decisions you've made in your position. So the policy type of directors and officers liability will help protect you for alleged errors, misstatements, omissions, misleading statements, breach of duty, anything that you may be accused of. Again, it gives you the legal protection and defense for these kinds of situations. I get a lot of questions on business interruption and business income. This is a very valuable coverage that will help your business stay afloat during a covered loss. So right now, that's kind of the point of contention. Is this COVID situation a covered loss? And the answer is, it depends. I know that's not a good answer, but that is the answer. Because typically, business interruption coverage requires there to be some damage to your structure. And many of the policies exclude pandemics and virus and bacteria as a triggering type of situation. Some policies, though, may cover a loss because of a closure due to a civil authority, which you could kind of argue we may be closed down because of a civil authority right now. And so that's why I say it depends. The wording here, let's get into some real technical. I know you realize that insurance is merely a contract between you and the insurance company. So it's got a lot of legal words in it, and it's hard to read through the policy because they'll say one thing in Part A, and then in Part C, they'll say everything in Part A except when this. So they kind of put it in and take it out all throughout the policy. And your policy could be hundreds of pages, but you do need to be aware of what is in your particular policy, or your insurance agent can help you with it. Okay, so what the policies typically say is we will pay for the actual loss of business income you sustained during the suspension of your operations. The suspension must be caused by direct physical loss or damage to property at premises. So if your policy says those specific words, then unless you have damage to your property, there's probably not coverage. But if you see some civil authority coverage in there, you may want to go ahead and file a claim. Read your policy and put in a claim if you think you have language that may apply. Actual loss of business income. Let's talk about that for a minute, because any of you folks that are big into numbers, and that's I am because I'm a CPA too, but actual loss of business income, you must have fantastic accounting records to get a good settlement in a claim for business interruption. You've got to be able to demonstrate your loss with your numbers. You've got to have last year's numbers, this year's numbers. You've got to have all of your expenses. You've got to have your net profit numbers from last year, what your taxes were from last year. And all of that is going to go into the calculation for the actual loss of business income, in addition to the duration of the event. And there's typically a waiting period, and it's usually around 72 hours, but some policies are different, so you need to know that too. So that means that whatever happened the first 72 hours doesn't count for your claim. It has to be after that period. So again, having a strong financial picture and with a lot of detail is going to really help you when you need to make a business interruption claim. Other things that are changing in our jobs and responsibilities are we might be making more deliveries now. Well, the problem is if your business never made deliveries before, you may need to change some of your insurance policies. You may need to add hired and non-owned protection for your staff when they're making deliveries, because it's going to affect them if something happens, if there's an accident during their delivery, or it's going to help your business because depending on how severe it is. Many personal auto policies don't cover losses when you're using your vehicle to deliver for a fee. That's because it's considered business use. Your auto policy is a personal auto policy. So make sure that you're properly protected. So hired and non-owned vehicle liability insurance covers the drivers whenever they're using personal vehicles for work-related activities. You would likely need a separate commercial policy if you use your car primarily or frequently for business. So here's where judgment comes in. If your car, you're using it for business almost all the time, you need to have a commercial policy. But if only occasionally, you might be able to modify your personal auto policy to add a business use rider or endorsement that would give you some protection when you're doing the business operations with your own vehicle. So again, these are things to talk about with your insurance agent, because you would hate to have this question come up after something bad happens. Try to be proactive and let's figure all this out ahead of time. Another fun thing that's coming up with remote workers is more exposure. There's cyber exposure and all kinds of other things that could go wrong. So let's, again, try to be proactive here. Working from home does not mean working without security. You have got to be sure that you've got a very strong remote access management policy. Consult your IT guru or subscribe to a service like Bitdefender, one of those that protects and fortifies your computers as they're accessing very important business information. I would recommend that you have your remote staff sign a work at home policy. This will ensure productivity as well as security. You want to specify the responsibilities of the employees while they're doing their teleworking. What's the expected work schedule that they should be adhering to? And what kind of location and surroundings and equipment should they have in their home office space or their telework place? So again, a lot of things, you need to step back and be proactive so that you have the protection that you need as an employer and for your business. Another thing is, since our employees are not with us day to day right now, because everybody's doing the stay-at-home thing, so most likely you're not seeing them. And it's harder to keep a pulse on how they're doing, but you've got to monitor them. You've got to find out how they're doing. What's their stress level? Do they have any medical issues? A lot of people are having to work from home and have the children there. So that's very stressful. They may be having a homeschool. They may be having their income disrupted. All of these are problems that you may not be able to fix, but you need to be aware of and encouraging your staff to get the help that they need, because those kinds of problems could lead to lower productivity for you and your business and could harm the customer experience if they're interfacing with customers from home. Another good coverage is the cyber liability insurance policy, because that helps protect your business from claims and expenses related to a data breach, which you read about those all the time. There's so many areas of exposure here. It's in the cloud. When you're dealing with the cloud, you could have a system failure, data loss. You could have employees that go rogue and sabotage something. You could have compromised email where somebody sends you something and you click it and then it blows up your system. You could have data breaches. You could have ransomware that would force you to have to pay some entity in another country to release your files. There's so many things that should be considered, and these cyber liability policies will help you manage that extreme cost and also give you guidance and advice on how to address it if something bad does happen. We have seen a lot of good insurance company responses to all of this. Many health insurance companies are waiving the copays, waiving the deductibles when you have to go and get tested for things or go to the doctor right now. So that's a good thing that they're trying to help. A lot of auto insurance companies are now offering rebates on like 15 to 25% of your monthly installment, because they're saying that they're experiencing less claims and they want to do something to try to help their wonderful customers. Most companies are allowing 30 to 60-day payment delays. So basically they let you skip a month and then they allocate what you missed paying over the remaining installments. And again, you do want to keep your insurance coverages in place, because even your personal insurance, they surcharge you if you have a lapse in coverage and then start it back up again. So you don't want to take that chance. The Coast Chamber is doing an excellent job of keeping all of our businesses informed on the loans and the grants and all of the resources available. You can go to mscoastchamber.org. But these are all things that you can apply for that will help keep your business alive during this crazy time. Also, the CARES Act is providing assistance and guidance to employers at treasury.gov. And one thing that we can really do for each other is support our small businesses, because we need each other and we need to support our community. Buy gift cards, order carry out or delivery from local restaurants. Let's support one another and keep our wonderful coast surviving, and then be ready to thrive when we're open back up for business. All right, so here's the reality check. So now that you've got all of these things in your head might be spinning because there's just so much information to be aware of, but you need to realize that this could happen again. The good news is we are survivors. We've been through a lot here on the coast, and we make it through, and we're going to do it again. But there's some things you can do to be better prepared and to continue to thrive with your business. Make sure you've got good policies and procedures. Keep being creative and find ways to continue your business regardless of what happens. Be sure that you review all operational changes with your insurance agent so that you're properly protected. Move more to digital workflows, adopt new ways of working, move things to the cloud. This is something that's kind of driving my business crazy right now, is the lack of bandwidth that we have in some of the locations. So improving bandwidth and capacity if your staff is accessing the servers remotely. And make sure you understand who your major suppliers are that impact your business and what they're doing for possible problems, because we're all so interconnected. It's a good thing, but it's also, if we all go down at the same time, it's very detrimental to each other. So we need to make sure that we're preparing for that so that nothing will stop us. We got to keep going. All right, so now if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If we run out of time and we don't have enough time, just email me and I'm happy to work with you and get them addressed.
Angelyn, that was so informative. You know, insurance can sometimes be a little overwhelming, and the way you broke it down was just very insightful. If you have any questions, please, if you hover over your screen, you'll see a Q&A box. You can type them in there. I know a lot of people have reached out to us, Angelyn, about, you know, if they have a claim, what's the first thing they need to do? Or what do these businesses need to tell their employees? Like, what's the first thing? Do they go straight to their insurer? Or should they do more research, or what?
If they have a claim, just in general or related to the COVID?
Related to COVID.
Yes. So if you have a claim, well, that's why you need to have a policy in place, because your employees need to know what to do if they need to make a claim, or if they contract COVID, is what I'm trying to say. So if they believe that they are going to test positive or they have the symptoms, they need to notify management, and management needs to take immediate action. And it could be closing down your operations, notifying everybody that there's been a possible positive COVID situation and everybody needs to incubate for 14 days. And then, depending on the situation, they need to go to the doctor, and then your health insurance would kick in. Depending on how long they're ill, the short-term disability may kick in. If they do have the disease, then they would be eligible for the critical illness payment. Depending on if they caught it at the workplace, then workers' comp would respond. So there's so many things. So basically, if you do have a positive COVID situation, if you know which policies you already have, I would recommend talking to your insurance agent, because you might have several places you can go to for relief.
Sure. Thank you. We do have one question. I've heard that getting life insurance is difficult now for senior citizens. Is this true?
Yes, we're seeing a lot of pressure in the insurance marketplace on health insurance, life insurance, and also some of the employers' liability insurance, quite frankly, because of the concern that this is having. It's hard prior to COVID for elderly folks to get life insurance. So the younger you are, the more likely you can get life insurance. And if you're going to get a term policy, get one for the longest possible term. If you are on a universal or whole life policy, that should last you until age 100 or so. But yes, it's becoming more stringent in the requirements for qualifying for insurance or getting a reasonable rate. So the advice would be the sooner the better. If you need life insurance, you need to get it now.
Awesome. Well, that looks like that's all the Q&As we have. Let me go back to Angelyn's slide. Let's see. Right here. So if you have any questions, here's her contact information. She is, always available and super supportive of the chamber. We can't thank her and SouthGroup Insurance enough for the membership. If anybody has any questions, there's her email. If you have any questions about the chamber, let us know and we'll be happy to help.